is listening it. And we're watching it all unravel in real time. Week 2 of the trial, it didn't just escalate, it exploded. And the one who lit the match? None other than Kid Cudi. Yes, you read that right. Kid Cudi walked into court and flipped the entire narrative. His testimony? Absolutely jaw-dropping. He exposed Diddy's darkest secrets, starting with a horrifying claim Diddy threatened to kill him, not once, not twice, but in a full-on, life-threatening campaign of terror. But baby, that was just the beginning, because escort after escort, male escorts to be specific, started coming forward. They testified, under oath, that they were there inside Diddy's infamous freak-off parties. And the list of celebs they saw at those parties, it's not just shocking, it's nuclear. And then it happened. Photographs, audio, voice recordings. Prosecutors dropped receipts like it was Black Friday in hell. Every image, every clip screamed the same truth. Diddy wasn't just playing games. He was dangerous. He was violent. And the evidence, it proved it.
Cudi had a brief relationship with Cassie Ventura during this time, and Combs allegedly made threats against him because of it. Cudi testified that he believes Combs actually broke into his house and testified that a few months later, a Molotov cocktail was placed on his Porsche, damaging his car. He told the jury he reached out to Combs after his car caught fire and described him with his hands behind his back like a Marvel supervillain. Combs has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his defense team says any sexual encounters were all consensual. Legal contributor Eric Faddis joins me now for more. So, Eric, what do you think? How does Ms. Cudi's testimony impact Combs' arson charges and the racketeering conspiracy counts that he faces, you think?
Yeah, Kira, I think we're firmly moving into RICO territory here. We're getting past some of the sex trafficking allegations, talking about a criminal enterprise that was allegedly engaged in committing crimes. And so Kid Cudi's testimony goes to trying to prove some of those predicate offenses. He says that Diddy and his team burglarized his home after Diddy found out that he was dating Cassie Ventura, and then shortly thereafter blew up his vehicle, which goes to arson. And so that was really the thrust of the testimony. That was the purpose for putting him on. There were some points scored by defense as well. It was some colorful testimony.
Now hold on to your seat, because when Cassie took the stand, she did not hold back. She told the world that Diddy had a meltdown the moment he found out she was dating Kid Cudi. And what did she do? She warned Cudi. She told him straight up, Diddy's coming for you. And days later, boom! Kid Cudi's car was literally blown up, not figuratively, literally on fire. When Cudi raced to the scene, what did he see? A Molotov cocktail inside his car. Someone had cut the sunroof open just to drop that firebomb inside, but it didn't stop there, oh no. Cassie testified that Diddy had already broken into Cudi's home and threatened him before the car explosion. And yes, this wasn't just a jealous lover's tantrum, these were criminal acts committed during Cassie's brief split from Diddy in 2011. It was a whole different level of obsession.
Kid Cudi had dated Cassie Ventura, and she testified that it made Sean Combs jealous and angry.
Testified with raw emotion about the break-in. He wasn't even home when it happened. Diddy just showed up. Cudi described a tense call with Diddy that sent chills through the courtroom. He said he told Diddy, "Are you in my house?" And Diddy didn't even deny it. He just said, "I just want to talk to you." "I'm on my way," Cudi replied. "Diddy, I'm here." But when Cudi arrived, gone, like a ghost. Creepy, doesn't even begin to cover it.
But he said Christmas presents he had bought for members of his family were unwrapped, torn open, and his dog was...
Then came the jaw dropper. Cudi revealed that in 2012, his Porsche 911 convertible was set ablaze. It wasn't an accident. The top of his Porsche had been sliced open and a firebomb, a Molotov cocktail, was intentionally dropped inside. Flames devoured the interior. That arson wasn't just a random act. It was part of the RICO charges prosecutors say Diddy now faces. This is organized crime. This is conspiracy. This is deliberate destruction. Cassie had warned him, and that warning, it came true. Prosecutors weren't playing. They revealed the photos from the police investigation into the arson.
Kid Cudi's car fire has been talked about for years, but it's significant now because federal prosecutors are trying to convince the jury that Sean Combs used arson as part of a criminal enterprise. That's one of the predicate acts of the racketeering conspiracy charge. Combs denies it.
Combs denies all the charges against him.
Although he was confused about why it would matter if Sean Combs knew that he was dating Cassie, because he had no reason to believe that they were still romantically involved. Remember, Kid Cudi had been dating Cassie, he says, for about a year at this point. He went and he got her from her apartment and he took her to the only place he thought would keep her safe, which is the Sunset Marquis. It's a hotel in LA. So in this phone call with Cassie, she says, look, Diddy knows we're dating. He asked for your address. I gave him your address, and I'm so scared right now. So he goes and he picks her up at her place and takes her to the Sunset Marquis Hotel. While they're there, they got a phone call from a friend of Cassie's who said, I'm sitting in front of your house right now, Kid Cudi. Sean Combs and an associate of his are inside your house. And that's when he was like, what is going on? He said he was angry. So he gets in his car. He said it was a Porsche 911 convertible. And on his way to the house, that's when he's starting to get worried about, what am I walking into? Could Combs have weapons? Who else could be there at the house? Could this turn violent? Although he said he did want to fight Combs for breaking into his house. And so he called 911, but he also called Combs and he said, why are you in my house? And he said, I'm on my way. So when he got to his house, Diddy wasn't there. What he did notice was that his surveillance cameras were turned the other way. Some Christmas presents were unwrapped from Chanel for his family. And that also his dog was in a bathroom with the door closed.
And honey, these weren't blurry snapshots. You could clearly see the roof of the car had been slashed open. That bomb was planted with intent. So let's get this straight. Diddy threatens Kid Cudi. Then Cudi's Porsche explodes. The only reason Diddy wasn't arrested right then and there? No direct evidence. That's it. But now? Oh, now things are different because Cudi met with Diddy a few days later, yes, face to face, and now he's telling the court everything. We learned that the night of the explosion, Cudi was sleeping at his ex-girlfriend's house. At the crack of dawn, his dog's sitter called and screamed, "Your car is on fire." 911 was called. Firefighters arrived. Photos were taken. The damage? Totaled. The bottle bomb with the rag still at the scene.
He said he remembered walking into a room with all sorts of glass windows and Sean Combs staring out the window, his hands behind his back, looking like what Kid Cudi called a Marvel supervillain. That earned something of a chuckle inside the courtroom. But he said Combs' demeanor was very calm.
Mescudi said he told Combs that Cassie told him she and Combs were broken up. When the meeting ended, he says, we stood up, shook hands, and as I was shaking his hand, I said, what are we going to do about my car? He looked right back at me, very cold stare, and said, I don't know what you're talking about.
And remember, Cassie Ventura had sent her mom an email just before Christmas in 2011 saying that Combs had threatened to harm both her and Scott Mescudi.
Mescudi testified that Combs basically apologized for everything without admitting any involvement in the firebombing a couple of years later, and that Mescudi had made peace with it. After his testimony, Kid Cudi posting to his Instagram stories.
And I've been seeing all the love and support, and I just want to say thank you so much, man. This is a stressful situation. I'm glad it's behind me.
The fire had ripped through the red interior, leaving nothing salvageable. It was arson, plain and simple. And Cudi's friend rushed to snap every picture of the crime scene before cops whisked the evidence away. Oh, and guess what? They collected DNA and fingerprints. Still, no one was arrested. Why? Because there's no footage of Diddy doing it. But what is there? Cassie. Telling the world he said he'd do it. And that's why the courtroom went ice cold when Cudi dropped that bomb. Arson, bribery, narcotics. These are just some of the crimes on Diddy's RICO indictment. And in Cudi's testimony, jurors were shown detailed photos of his burned up Porsche. A 2-foot hole had been ripped into the soft roof. The interior, blackened with smoke and melted plastic. It looked like something out of a war zone. And then, oh baby, then the prosecution unveiled something we weren't ready for.
No one was ever prosecuted. There's no direct evidence at all linking Sean Combs. And that's a problem. It's enough for the court of public opinion, but it's not enough for a court of law where proof beyond a reasonable doubt is required. Do we think he did it? Heck yes, we think he did it. But I don't know if that's enough to prove arson as one of those crimes that they've alleged was part of his RICO criminal enterprise.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Apart from the fact that he threatened to do it before it was actually done, there's no evidence that he used a staff member or anyone in his enterprise to do that either. I was more interested in the break-in and an assistant named Capricorn Clark, who apparently, Kid Cudi said, screamed to him on the phone, I was forced into a car and forced to drive with Diddy to your home where I am parked right now, and he is in there in your home right now. To me, that screamed with a receipt almost of forced labor and coercive behavior within your enterprise to commit a crime.
Yeah, it's possible. It's not enough to show he's a really bad guy. It is definitely not enough to show that he is an abuser, which they have proven beyond all doubt. They must show these crimes.
For the first time since Diddy's arrest, the public saw actual photographs from inside his hotel room that day. And what was inside? Bags of drugs, guns, bottles of baby oil. You already know what was happening. Homeland Security testified that they found $9,000, 0 cents in cash inside that room just hours after one of Diddy's freak-off sessions. The place was a scene straight out of a fever dream. And it wasn't fiction, it was evidence.
First look inside Combs' Miami mansion the day federal agents busted the gate open last year to raid it. A federal agent testifying about the evidence, guns and ammo seized from Diddy's home that were found near alleged freak-off supplies, which included dozens of bottles of baby oil and boxes of platform heels, bondage restraints, and bundles of rope. Also photographed as evidence that day, motivational messages on Combs' bathroom mirror that included "You a legend" and "Upward motion," and drugs. Lots of drugs, including ones found in plastic bags inside a Gucci bag and orange tablets with the Tesla logo that tested positive for ecstasy. Now, Combs has pleaded not guilty to all allegations in this case.
So we just got new exhibits today. Take a look at these photos that prosecutors have just released. They're pictures of Diddy's former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura, with what she says are bruises on her back and legs, which you can see here, and also a gash above her eye. Also released today some pictures from when Diddy was arrested in September of last year at the Park Hyatt Hotel in New York. And a special agent with Homeland Security testified last week that some of the items found included baby oil, drugs, these pink packets of ketamine. There's also this image of a knife wedged in a door. Now, Combs, we aren't sure if he's going to be taking a stand in his own defense, but he denies all of the allegations against him. But will all of these witnesses really prove the government's charges that he was running this criminal empire and that he's guilty of trafficking?
With the photos, the tapes, and the witnesses stacking up, Diddy's legal team did what desperate teams do. They begged for a mistrial. They tried to argue that Cudi's testimony was too damaging, that it would unfairly poison the jury. But it gets wilder. Brian Steele, Diddy's attorney, stood up in court and actually said, "Your Honor, I move for a mistrial."
Diddy's lawyer Brian Steele was going to push for a mistrial yesterday during Kid Cudi's testimony. And the reason that he was about to push for a mistrial is because he thought that Kid Cudi was going to say that Diddy unalived people. One of the last questions that was asked to Kid Cudi in his testimony by the government is if he had safety concerns, and this is basically why he left his relationship with Cassie Ventura. Then Diddy's team called for a sidebar where you go up to the judge and you express concerns or issues that you're having. Brian Steele said, "Your Honor, I am going to move for a mistrial. The government knows the answer that is about to be that Mr. Combs has had other people unalived. This is an outrageous question." And the judge shot back quick and said, "He didn't say that." Then Brian Steele says, "But he will say that." And the judge said, "He hasn't said that." Brian Steele said, Well, he's about to say it, and I'm putting the court on notice. And the judge went in even harder and said, no, you don't get to put me on notice. There are no grounds for any application along those lines of a mistrial, because no question that you are talking about has been asked and the answer has not been given. The judge then says, now what is your objection to the question that was asked? Brian Steele says it again. Why were you scared of Mr. Combs? And his answer is going to be because Mr. Combs is violent. He had other people unalived. The judge then says his understanding of the things that had happened and his understanding of that event is not a 404A issue, which is what was raised, correct?
Why? Because he believed Cudi was about to say that Diddy had people killed. Steele was shook. He told the judge, this is an outrageous question. He was trying to shut it down, but honey, the damage was already done. Just the implication had everyone in court holding their breath. Even if the words weren't spoken, the fear behind them spoke volumes.
I believe that that's going to be his answer to why he was scared. I'm preempting it because I know the court if he says it. Basically saying if Kid Cudi said that Diddy had people unalived, that he was going to move for a mistrial. The judge then says, that's the way you raise the issue? Okay. Yes, I just wanted to give you a preview. Now, what further questions do you have, Ms. Johnson? And this is the government. I don't have any further questions on this. I don't believe that that's what he would say. I was specifically directing this to the end of the relationship and his concerns at that time. The judge says, well, to be fair, you asked the question and you got your answer. And Mr. Steele, your point is let's just move on, right? And Brian Steele says, please. And then the judge said, so let's move on. Nothing ended up coming from it because Kid Cudi did not say that Diddy had anybody unalived. His response to that question was that Diddy was violent.
And the reason Diddy's team is spiraling? Because the jury already sees him as violent. Let's rewind to George Kaplan, Diddy's former executive assistant. He took the stand and dropped a bombshell. He quit working for Diddy after witnessing him beat Cassie on a private jet. Kaplan testified that in 2015, he saw Cassie lying flat on her back, sobbing and screaming, "Isn't anybody seeing this?" No one intervened. No one, not even the security. Then came the audio.
And so he would start to see all of these things take place. He was on direct describing an incident on a private plane between Sean and Cassie, in which he described Sean as holding up like a rocks glass, and heard Cassie then say, isn't someone seeing this? Talking about a beating that was taking place right there in the moment. Now, George eventually left because he said he was tired of hiding the domestic violence from everyone. So he's a former executive assistant to Combs, and he testified that he witnessed Combs be violent with Ventura while on that private jet in 2015. He did hear that glass break and saw Combs standing over Ventura. He told the jury that Ventura did scream, isn't anyone seeing this? So that's been some of the testimony. He has testified to several incidents of domestic violence that he saw at the hands of Sean Combs toward Cassie, and then also a name we've heard in this case, Gina. Julie, when Cassie was on the stand, as well as one of her friends, that was Carrie Morgan, she was saying that Gina was a real problem. George Kaplan was talking about some domestic violence that he witnessed toward Gina as well, a time when Sean was throwing apples really hard at Gina, and Gina was covering her face. Abilities increased. He began to set up the hotel rooms. And what did he say that he would use to set up the hotel rooms? He said they would have what was called a hotel bag. Inside that hotel bag would be things like the baby oil, the Astroglide, liquor, drugs, he mentioned. So he mentioned several different items that he would bring in to set up the hotel rooms. He also said that afterwards, what his responsibility was to clean up those hotel rooms after things were taking place behind closed doors. And he said he wanted to do this, put the room back together as perfectly as possible, because he didn't want anyone selling any kind of photographs of the hotel room to try to make Sean Combs look bad.
In court, they played Cassie's own recording, her screaming after discovering that Diddy had been distributing private tapes of her. Yes, those tapes. Cassie had been forced into drug-fueled freak-off parties, and Diddy, he allegedly filmed everything and used those tapes to blackmail her. He threatened to release the videos if she ever left him, and sometimes He even showed them to other people. Cassie's voice in the courtroom was blood-curdling. She was recorded screaming at a man named Suget, thinking he had seen one of those tapes.
Dawn Richards says she wasn't alone in witnessing Sean Diddy Combs' abuse. During her second day of testimony in the music mogul's federal trial, the 41-year-old described an alleged 2010 incident of Combs punching then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura at a West Hollywood, California restaurant and said Usher was also a witness to the event. During her testimony May 19th per NBC News, which had a reporter in the courtroom, she said, quote, Mr. Combs punched Cassie in the stomach. They were having a private conversation and then he punched her in the stomach. She immediately leaned over and left. In addition to Usher, Richard, who was a member of the girl group Danity Kane, which was formed on Combs' show Making the Band in 2004, alleged that other musicians, including singer Neo, record exec Jimmy Iovine, and rapper Big Daddy Kane were present as well. When Richard and Ventura got into a car to leave after the alleged restaurant incident, Richard said another physical altercation took place between Combs, who has pleaded not guilty to all charges, and his then-girlfriend. She continues in her testimony, quote, we got in the car to head back to her house. Combs grabbed her, slapped her, popped her in the mouth, and told her to shut the f*** up. Everyone was quiet the rest of the ride.
And then, shockingly, Cassie threatened him, told him she'd kill him or have someone else do it. That side of Cassie, nobody had ever heard it before. But the pain, the desperation, it was real, raw, human. And courtroom insiders say we haven't heard the last of those tapes. The vibe inside that courtroom, it was pure chaos. Diddy's defense team was stumbling left and right. Objections were flying from both sides, and even the judge had had enough. At one point, the judge literally snapped, saying they needed to set ground rules because things were getting out of control. The courtroom, a total circus, but just when we thought it couldn't get worse for Diddy, it did.
Next up on the stand, after Cassie's mom stepped down, a man who goes by the name, wait for it, The Punisher. The Punisher is an exotic dancer and former sex worker whose real name is Sheree Hayes. Mr. Hayes told the jury that he got his nickname playing basketball, but his photos, they seem to tell a different story for why he may be using that name today. Ooh, kind of safe for work, almost not safe for work. I wouldn't put it up at work, but that's the Punisher, y'all. Mr. Punisher testified that he was hired by Diddy and Cassie for 8 to 12 different times, things like episodes. And he was meant to create a sexy scene that would last for hours. He said that Diddy called all the shots in these episodes. He didn't call them freak-offs, but he described what we've heard as freak-offs. He never saw any cameras, he said. He didn't see any violence. And he said, although Cassie would sometimes wince or sigh at some of the sex directions that came from Diddy, he said it didn't seem as though Cassie was there against her will. Again, this is a prosecution witness, so that's kind of, it's on the fence there. He does certainly corroborate the freak-offs and what happened in the freak-offs, but that whole business about, to him, he wasn't sure if Cassie was into it or not, but he did hear that she winced and that she sighed as Diddy gave a lot of those directions. By the way, the Punisher also said that he never saw Diddy take drugs, never saw that he seemed drunk or high, which is exactly what prosecutors are trying to show, that this was not just an out-of-control, party of an enlisted megastar, but instead was a clear-eyed criminal enterprise.
Because now, it wasn't just Cassie or Cudi testifying. Celebrities who had seen the abuse firsthand were being named, and the names? Iconic. Usher, Neo, Dawn Richard from Danity Kane. They weren't just in the room. According to the testimony, they witnessed it. Saw Diddy hit Cassie, heard the screams, watched the aftermath. Dawn took the stand and exposed a moment that will haunt Hollywood forever. She said she saw Diddy punch Cassie in the stomach at a West Hollywood restaurant in 2010. They were having a private conversation and he just did it. No warning, no shame. Cassie leaned over in pain and walked out, and still no one did a damn thing.
She did not interview Cassie, any victims in this case. She was providing general testimony about victims of domestic abuse. how they cope, what different levels of abuse there are, how do people recover from it, the trauma they experience, really what was taking place in regard to the back and forth, the cross as well as the direct, was a lot of attacking by defense counsel as to her credibility and her qualifications. We do have some testimony we can put up for you, though, on this when she was on the stand this morning. Let's go ahead and put that up, and I can tell you exactly a little bit more about it. So Hughes confirmed that she has never testified in the defense of a man accused of a sex crime. This was on the cross-examination. I don't evaluate offenders, is what she responded with. Hughes maintained that prosecutors have not discussed specifics of this case with her. This cross-examination was done by an attorney named Mr. Bach. And you could tell, Judge Ashley, when he was doing his cross-examination, he is very skilled at cross-examining expert witnesses. He again brought up how much money she is being paid and how much she makes from really just being an expert witness in trials. So he was asking her about that.
Now, here's where things got even darker. One of the male sex workers that Diddy allegedly hired to assault Cassie also testified. His name, the Punisher, yes, that's what he went by. And what he said, absolutely soul-crushing. He told the court that every time Diddy ordered Cassie to be intimate with him, she would sigh and weep. She was broken. She was tired. But she was too scared to say no. She didn't have a choice. This wasn't just abuse, it was dehumanization. Cassie said in her own words that her stomach would churn at the thought of being used, passed around, treated like a thing, not a person. And if she even thought about saying no, she was terrified of what Diddy would do to her. And then came the expert. Forensic psychologist Dr. Dawn Hughes took the stand to explain exactly why Cassie and so many others stayed. She said victims of abuse don't stay because they want to. They stay because they're trapped physically, emotionally, financially, psychologically. And abusers like Diddy, they know exactly how to keep their victims under control.
But something interesting came up was when Combs' defense team referenced his bipolar disorder, and that's really the first time that we're hearing that he might actually have a diagnosed clinical condition. We know that he has talked about his temper, his mood swings. I mean, that's how he got his nickname, right? Puffy, because he huffs and he puffs. But it's no laughing matter. We know that he's capable of incredibly terrifying violence. Just take a look at that 2016 security footage of Cassie being brutally beaten by him. And so, now we're learning that perhaps he might have been on medication. He sought treatment, and he may have bipolar disorder.
Property, what did they find?
Well, you started to list it, Eva. The guns, the drugs, the freak-off supplies. And I think what was most striking, perhaps, for the jury to see was the proximity. There were the AR-15 style assault rifles right in the same shelving unit as the baby oil and the Astroglide and the platform heels and the lingerie. And then in another part of the house, there was the loaded .45 caliber handgun that was found in a red suitcase. All of this was being kept by Combs. For what reason, we don't know, but federal prosecutors, I think, are hoping to make a link, especially between the guns and the freak-offs, because their whole theory of the case is that Combs used violence and the threat of violence to coerce women, particularly Cassie Ventura, but other women as well, into these sexual performances.
It's not just bruises. It's power, it's shame, it's threats. And Cassie, she was living all of it. And let's get this straight. Diddy's alleged mental health issues, they don't excuse this. Bipolar disorder, mood swings, none of that gives him the right to destroy lives. Because what he did to Cassie, it started when she was just 19. He groomed her, controlled her, manipulated her for years, and every single time she tried to escape, he dragged her right back in with violence, threats, or blackmail, even going so far as to threaten her mother. Now, here's the real tea, the testimonies, the photographs, the audio recordings. They all paint the same picture, one of brutality, one of manipulation, one of cover-up so massive, so calculated, they could only be executed by someone with immense power. From the freak-off parties to the threats, to the beatings, to the blackmail, this trial isn't just about Diddy, it's about everything that's been allowed to happen behind the red ropes of Hollywood's most exclusive circles. And while Diddy's team scrambles for a mistrial, trying to hide behind legal smokescreens, the world is watching. We're not blind anymore. We're not silenced anymore. The victims, they're speaking. The mask, it's slipping. And this time, Diddy's empire may not survive the truth.